a champion of gun rights is Senator Joel Anderson, who represents the 36th District, which includes San Diego and Riverside. And we've invited him to the program. It's nice to have you with us, Senator Anderson.
Carlos, thank you so much for inviting me.
So tell me what your reaction is to this governor in Georgia who's decided that this is an okay thing to have, to be able to carry guns everywhere.
Well, I don't have a problem with it. I think it's we should encourage it. You know, I don't fear the gun that's on your hip. I fear the gun that you've hidden from me, because most likely you have nefarious actions that you want to do with that. When you have it on your hip, it's very clear where it is and what the purpose is. So I'm a big supporter of the Second Amendment. I do believe that we have a right to carry.
One of the reasons, thank you very much for that opinion, and one of the reasons that I wanted to have a discussion with you is because you had the courage to stand alone in the chamber in Sacramento, under the dome, as you said in your speech there in Sacramento, to really stand alone and say, look, this is ridiculous. We have a member among us who has been convicted of 8 felony counts, and you guys are being wishy-washy about expelling him. What does a guy have to do to get expelled from a sacred place like the legislature?
Well, clearly, being convicted of 8 felonies isn't enough. And I was shocked that I was the lone vote. I didn't set out to be the lone vote that day. I thought I was a much more compelling orator. I thought that people would agree with me and vote with me. And the idea that we're sending a senator home, not to do the people's work, but to accept the people's pay, is absolutely outrageous. I mean, this is a slap in the face to taxpayers. It's a slap in the face to everybody who believes the Constitution should be enforced. You know, the idea that we don't like Rod Wright, we're way beyond that. Rod Wright is one of the most likable men you'll ever meet. I did bills. I joint authored bills with him. I worked closely with him. But it's not about Joel Anderson or Rod Wright. It's about what our constituents deserve. After all, we're serving them in the people's house, the Senate floor.
He was convicted of voter fraud and perjury, and regardless of whether he's a nice guy or not, he did something that was dishonest and illegal, and he got busted for it. And we should not, as taxpayers, have to pay for his little vacation.
Well, the Constitution allows for 3 items: reprimand, censure, or expelling the member. There is no censure. Suspense.
Yeah.
So what happened is there was so much pressure from national papers and the rest that the Senate leadership, the President Pro Tem, decided to create this term suspense. It sounds tough, like you're tough on crime, but if you're saying to a member, I want you to go home, I think you should retire or resign, because I don't believe that you should have a right to cast any more votes on this floor, the follow-up should be to expel the person. When you say, I want you to go home, take it easy, kick your feet up, and I'm going to send you paychecks, then what you really should say publicly is, hang in there, buddy. I think you can beat the charges.
That's a sweet deal.
And, you know, I don't everyone talks about him, and everyone talks about whether I'm doing the right thing or not. Who's talking about the million Californians he represents? The million Californians that get tax bills each and every day and have no representation for the money they pay. This cuts at our very Constitution, and it's wrong, plain and simply wrong.
Well, it cuts to the character of people that we're sending to Sacramento and to Washington. And one of the pet peeves of Carlos Amezcua in this program is that we have legislators, representatives of all stripes from top to bottom, who don't honor the code, don't honor their oath, and who actually use it as an upwardly mobile move for them personally. It's not a matter of service. They feel like they're this elitist class that somehow they can get away with running guns or taking trips on somebody or doing these kinds of things and getting away with it. The arrogance that is now occupying the halls of our city halls, of our state legislatures or state assemblies and Congress in Washington, this has got to stop. And Senator Joel Anderson was among the brave ones who stood up and said, enough of this nonsense. I want to hear what you have to say about some of the other members in your chamber, Calderon, Yee, who have also done things. But we're going to take a break right now for traffic. Let's check in with the Helpful SoCal Honda Traffic Center with Mike Nolan. It's the Carlos Amezcua Show on the Patriot AM 1150. We're speaking with Senator Joel Anderson, who represents the 36th District, which includes San Diego and Riverside counties. And it's great to have you with us, Senator Anderson.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here.
All right, so listen, I want to get off this topic and move on to something else, but I just wanted to just point out to our listeners that you were the brave one who stood up before Darrell Steinberg and the rest of the Assembly and said, look, this is not going to fly. We need to be true to our constituents, true to the people who pay our bills and who pay our salaries. That's our job. Our job is to represent them and to represent their best interests. And having a convicted felon on taking tax money away is not the right thing to do.
Carlos, right now we're going into an election. If Rod Wright was on the ballot and Rod Wright wanted to vote for himself as a felon, he would not be allowed to vote. So we would be allowing him to vote for 38 million Californians on that Senate floor. Mm-hmm. Once you violate the public's trust, it's time for you to go home. So that was the whole premise of my arguments, that I believe that people deserve to have representation in the Senate and that we should not be violating the public's trust. If any of your listeners want to hear my speech, it's up on my state website. I'm proud of the work that I do. I'm proud of the votes I make. I've made it a campaign promise, and I've tried my best to live up to it, not to miss a vote. I vote on every bill. If I'm in the room, I vote. I've never laid off a bill in my career. Now, I've missed 70 or so votes because I was simply ill. But if I'm in the room, I'm voting because that's what you pay me to do.
We're going to link your website to our website, which is patriot.la. Now let's talk about the Citizens Protection Act, because this is something that's coming up quickly, and our audience needs to know about it. And you have co-authored this with Ted Lieu, and it's called Senate Bill 828, and it really is a Citizens Protection Act. Give me it in a nutshell if you can.
Well, we're using the 10th Amendment to enforce the 4th Amendment. You see, right now, under the Obama administration, the NSA has just gone absolutely rogue. They're trying to pick up as much data on every citizen, whether there's a warrant or not having a warrant, on every citizen. They're pursuing everything. So we wanted to create a bright line saying that no state employee may assist the NSA on collecting data on California citizens unless, of course, they have a warrant or there's some level of due process. So this mass capturing of data is not going to be allowed. They're not going to get your DMV records. They're not going to get your Cover California records. They're not going to get your tax records, your voting records. We're not going to give them anything unless there's probable cause. And the reason why that's so important is, look, we want to protect against terrorism, but if it comes at the expense of liberty or freedom, we've already lost the battle. I have no problems with the NSA listening to me calling Iran, but I do have a problem with them listening to me as I call Escondido or Pico Rivera. Look, there should be some level of probable cause. The 4th Amendment is very important.
Yeah, probable cause is very important. So here's the thing. So this involves state workers like the California Franchise Tax Board and agencies that collect data from all of us?
That's correct. So right now, there's nothing in our law that specifically says you may not do this. So if the NSA calls you and says, I want this data, you're most likely going to comply. You want to be helpful. After all, nobody's for terrorism. We're all against it. But it shouldn't be at the cost of our liberty or freedom. And that means that when you call, you can ask for specific things, but you can't ask for all of it as a data dump. As far as I know, you've done nothing wrong. There's no reason that they need to have a dossier on you. This goes back to Nixon. Nixon was labeling citizens as subversives and keeping files on them without any due process. It was wrong when Nixon did it, and it's absolutely wrong when Obama does it. And that's why we've decided, and Ted Lieu's a Democrat, I'm a Republican, but we both understand the importance of privacy and staying within the Constitution.
So what constitutes probable cause in a situation like this?
Well, it could be a multitude of items. Perhaps that you have known affiliations with Al Qaeda. Perhaps but I mean, there's a whole litany of issues. I hate to go through them all. I don't want to take up the whole show doing that. But the bottom line is there has to be something that triggers it. It can't be just a random collection of data, trolling for something that's irregular.
Okay.
So if we gave them data on 38 million Californians for them to sift through till they find somebody, that's wrong. They need to come up and say, look, this person fits a profile. This person has an activity that they're doing that leads us to believe that we should check into them further. But your grandmother, my grandmother, shouldn't be on that list. Some Carmelite nun should not be on that list,
right,
unless, of course, they're calling Iran on a daily basis and they're speaking directly to known al-Qaeda members.
Now, the other thing that I noticed on this is that you're also wanting to block public universities from serving as NSA research facilities or recruiting grounds. So they're cherry-picking our people to do that?
Well, it's worse than that. Under the PRISM system, they've actually gotten private companies to fork over all their private data without any kind of notice to their employees. And if you Google PRISM, I don't want to get into it because it's a big elaborate program,
sure,
but it's shocking. It cuts to the very core of our liberty. The beauty of our country is that we have a Constitution that provides that we don't need papers to travel between states, that we live in freedom. The terrorists want to deprive us of that freedom. Let's not make it easy for them by doing it to ourselves before, under the ruse of protecting us. There has to be something to protect, and I believe it's liberty. And so when I look at this stuff, I don't want any harm to come to any U.S. citizen or Californian, but I think one of the greatest harms we could have is to give our liberty up without a fight. People have died all over the world to ensure that we live free. And for us to allow our government to steal it from us in the dark of night is absolutely wrong.
Well, but I'm going to just throw something else in here, and that is that, okay, so this will prevent the National Security Agency or any government agency from the federal level to gather data. But Google's doing it all day long. Facebook's doing it all day long. These private companies, they know everything about us. They're not going to prosecute us, but they're certainly going to use that information. And does this prevent them from sharing that data with NSA?
Well, there was a federal law that was passed, I believe in 2007, that said that they may not mandate that information without due process from those companies. But under the PRISM system, many of those companies, I think 9 or 12 of them, are voluntarily coughing it up. So if you use Gmail, if you use Microsoft products, they're allowing the NSA to come into their servers and have complete access to your personal data.
That's frightening.
It's absolutely frightening, but it's even more frightening when it's state-sponsored. And while I can't tell companies that they can't do it because I believe in the free markets, that's up to the individual consumer to make those choices of whether they believe that they want to use those services. I certainly, as a state legislator, can stop the state of California from turning over your data without probable cause. And that's why it's so important that we're using the 10th Amendment to enforce the 4th Amendment.
It just seems to me that that's a direct violation of the 4th Amendment, just handing over the information without any kind of due process. But I guess they've figured out a way around it, and now there's really, I'm going to have to say this, Senator Anderson, there's really very little expectation of privacy anymore, as all of us use all of these technologies that are available to us to make our lives easier. But in fact, we're actually turning over so much information to people who don't even know us and may not have our best interest at hand.
Oh, absolutely. But so a lot of the bills I deal with privacy because I really think that this is a fascinating issue, and I think that we have a lot of challenges as we look forward.
And it comes up for vote on Tuesday?
That's correct. And,
right.
If your listeners are interested, please send my office a letter or an email saying that we support your efforts so that we may list you on the bill.
We will do that on patriot.la. You connect. Thank you so much, Senator Anderson. You connect. Thank you so much, Senator Anderson. You connect. Thank you so much.